The 50th sitting of the Tobago House of Assembly 2009 to 2013 session took place in the Assembly Chamber on Jerningham Street, Scarborough, where Secretary of Finance Dr. Anselm London moved the motion standing in his name.
Whereas capital formation is essential to the development of any identifiable economic and political space, including the island of Tobago, and whereas allocations by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago have fallen woefully short of the island's genuine development needs, those needs as articulated in its annual budget submissions to the Prime Minister and Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. And whereas over the past 12 years or so, written and oral representations have been made to various ministers of finance by the PNM administration of the Tobago House of Assembly to convey approval for borrowing on capital markets by the Tobago House of Assembly, as provided for in Section 51B of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, in order to finance expanded capital formation on the island. And whereas the central government has on no occasion acceded to any such request from the Tobago House of Assembly, be it resolved that the Executive Council be commended for its efforts over the years to secure financing for an expanded capital expenditure program in Tobago beyond the parliamentary allocation to the Tobago House of Assembly for its development program, and be it further resolved that this House encourage the Executive Council to continue to explore all possible additional legal financing mechanisms to facilitate such capital formation beyond the development program allocation provided by Parliament. And be it further resolved that the Executive Council institute all such mechanisms and take all such administrative and other steps to assist in the financing of an expanded capital expenditure program consistent with the accelerated development of the island of Tobago.
Finance Secretary Dr. London explained what capital formation is.
So capital formation is not recurrent expenditure. And what makes it special and unique, it doesn't deal with issues of just for today. It deals with issues for today, tomorrow, and the years down the road. To develop, you have to invest money in people and in structures and related supported infrastructure. Tobago recognized the importance of this. In former years, you can talk about the importance of the North Coast Road, important investment for Tobago. You may talk about the airport, important investment Tobago. And in modern times, important elements of capital formation in this island include, among other things, the formerly much maligned financial complex, the Scarborough Library, Studley Park Quarry, the Shore Park Cultural Complex, and lest we forget the important investments we made and continue to make as an island on education.
Dr. London made reference to the lack of sufficient financial development allocations to Tobago over the years and the use of the BOLT arrangement as a means of facilitating development on the island.
The development program levels that we have seen have fallen way below the requested levels required for accelerated economic growth on this island. Whether it's a PNM government or a UNC government or what exists today as a government, PP or otherwise, or fraction thereof, the fact of the matter is the Tobago House of Assembly has never in its, even in the days of Hochoi Charles and his friends in the UNC, the Tobago House of Assembly has never received the necessary resources from the central government to do its capital formation work in Tobago, i.e. to do its development program work in Tobago. Governments all over the world, not just in Tobago, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, have turned to a modern financing mechanism called a BOLT.
In her contribution to the debate, Councillor Yvette Parks-Caruth criticized the Executive Council's use of the BOLT arrangement in the construction of the Division of Agriculture's administrative complex at Sherborne.
If, as you say, you have been starved of development fund, how is it you can find millions of dollars, because I can't quote figures, which was not planned for or budgeted for? Where did the money come from? Let's move the agricultural complex from Botanic Garden and bolt it down on a $12 million parcel of land at Sherborne. Lease the land for 199 years to developers at $10 per year under this so-called BOLT arrangement. Madam Presiding Officer, you have experienced a long list of madness and ad hocism that has characterized the island's development program over the last 12 years under the direction of the current Executive Council of the Assembly. A totally uncoordinated and wayward approach to capital development that can only be described as scattergram. Be on the minority side, support the general principle of the motion, but we do not and we will not support, what we will not support is for this Executive Council, which has demonstrated pure financial impotence and fiscal indiscretion, to have any authority to borrow on the capital market.
Agriculture Secretary Gary Melville addressed the issue of unspent balances raised by Councillor Caruth.
Reference has been made to the issue of unspent balances. And one of the reasons that we have unspent balances in the Assembly is not because of the incompetence of the Assembly. Some of the unspent balances that you have in the Assembly are primarily due to the fact that vacancies are not being filled in the public service in Tobago. So therefore, the money is budgeted to those vacancies is unspent at the end of the year. The money that you would have also used to finance the work of those individuals would also be unspent. That's where unspent balances sometimes come in. And sometimes, of course, you have now some efficiencies in terms of doing your work, so things are done cheaper. And you have unspent balances.
Chief Secretary Orville London explained that the unspent money is put into projects which the THA promised to Tobagonians.
That we are not going to have spare money to finish pay for the cultural complex. We're not going to have spare money to finish pay for the library. We're not going to have spare money to build Scarborough RC School. We're not going to have spare money to start work on the Roxborough Administrative Complex. We're not going to have spare money. They're not going to give us enough money to finish the swimming pool at Kendall. I'm taking you a bet on that. We're not going to have enough money to build the houses that Mr. Adams has promised the people of Tobago at Corland and Adventure and at Adelphi and at Belgrade. But these things have to be done. The people of Tobago are not going to forgive us. So that we as responsible managers, just as how you all do, most of us who are responsible make sure that when the month done, we have some money in the pocket and a little bit of thing in the bank. That is what unspent balances mean to me. Not on our inability to spend, but our desire to plan and plan well, so that we are not embarrassed.
Secretary Melville gave reasons for the THA using the BOLT arrangement in financing development in Tobago.
As we have with the National Insurance Board of Trinidad and Tobago. And in most of those countries, they have companies that use those funds for investment purposes. The Tobago House of Assembly has no call on the National Insurance Funds collected in Tobago. In other countries, they can invest those funds in capital investment. We can't do that here. Those are all options that the Tobago House of Assembly don't have. And that's why we end up coming to bolt. It represents still one of the few options that we have outside of our allocation to be able to fund development in Tobago. One of the reasons that the Assembly, the PNM, this Assembly might have been a little more quiet in the previous years about the financing of development in Tobago is that the central government at the time was willing to make investments in Tobago that were not on the Tobago House of Assembly's budget. Let us not forget that. Just on Friday, the Secretary for Finance and Chief Secretary would have opened the first factory shell at Cove. In terms of the Assembly's investment in Cove, over $100 million, that investment would have all really been to naught without almost a $3 billion investment by the central government in the power plant, in the gas line and so on through NGC, and the gas processing plant. We got those kind of investments on the previous central government.
Secretary Melville stated that the division's expanding workforce needs a permanent space where all the departments can be housed.
The Division of Agriculture currently rents 4 properties at Glen Road to be able to house its administrative or meet its administrative requirements. Those properties house general administration, including the office of the secretary and the office of the administrator. They house the accounts department, human resource department, communications, IT, PIU. The departments are natural resources and the environment, fisheries and marine resources, food crop production, livestock production, you name it. The division presently pays rent for 4 buildings to be able to keep those staff. The division, like any other progressive modern organization, is expanding to bring in new units to deal with issues like climate change, to be able to inject a greater business approach to agriculture overall and fishing, to provide more support for the sector, and is expected to expand to having maybe about 380 staff that is going to need to house by the end of 2013. So in the circumstances, the need for a building by the Division of Agriculture, Marine Affairs, Marketing and the Environment, not agriculture only, but a division comprising a number of technical units beside agriculture and also comprising a huge administrative component to be able to service that technical function. That's the reason that's the need for space. And the division would have tried to build a building or tried to start a project to build a building, as would have been noted by the Secretary for Finance. But the division would have chosen to go back to the Botanical Gardens where it was originally housed and where the space at Botanical Gardens became too small for the division's needs. That's why it started renting. But when it looked at the situation in terms of constructing a building at Botanical Gardens, there were too many challenges. Besides you would have had challenges with parking. That building would have seriously damaged the aesthetics of the gardens and would have significantly reduced the amount of green space available in the gardens, which the gardens is really the only major green space that you have in Scarborough. And hence the reason why the division would have had to look for other options. So when the Milshove opportunity arose, as would have been noted, the division would have been one of those divisions vying for that building and would have been fortunate enough to be able to become the client for which the building is going to be constructed. The initial proposal from the company would have offered 50,000 square feet of space at a higher cost. And through that negotiation and redesign process, we were able to get 82,000 square feet of building space. So that you can have adequate space for the numbers of persons that we are talking about housing in the division. And housing our employees in an environment where they can be productive because they are housed to meet OSH requirements, organizational safety and health requirements, standards.
Minority Leader Ashworth Jack said that there is no issue using the bolt arrangement to develop projects in Tobago. However, the THA should look closely at the conditions and reasons surrounding the development of projects on the island.
Tobago have not been treated as an equal partner, and that is the reason why we have find ourselves in the position of not being able to finance development projects in the way we like it. And that is why the respondent to this motion would have clearly indicated that the concept of both is not the issue that we have a problem with. Something will have to be wrong with anyone in Tobago who says that we must not find an alternative means of financing Tobago's development. So the issue here is not finding an alternative means. It is finding alternative means that is best and gives best value for money for us in Tobago. And we must ask ourselves if the arrangement, because what has happened is that this whole debate, as well as intent as the motion was, have been turned into an issue of gold. And that was not, from my understanding, the intent of the motion. But since that is what it is, let us address it. Let's address the issue of vote. Madam Presiding Officer, the major concern as raised by the TOP, because we have to play a proverbial ostrich if we didn't believe that it was not as a result of what was raised by the political organization that we are here today discussing this matter. Because the Secretary for Agriculture in his presentation just said that this has been going on for 2 years. Yet, not once in the 2 years were we privy to any of this. So it means simply that it is because of the public outcry that we are discussing this matter as it is. Someone will say that in the last budget presentation it was said that a bolt arrangement will be made for some issue in agriculture. 2 years after, the discussion has been ongoing. Madam Presiding Officer, the Secretary also said that there was an issue of land on the other side of the road to which we referred, and after thank God that the issue was raised, a letter was written to the Minister of Finance, and the lands were paid. Money was found and land was paid for. I would love the Secretary to produce a letter written before this issue was raised to pay for the land. So if the issue here was that there was an urgent need to build on property in that area, why wasn't, when it be this minister or the minister before? Because that issue, that land was, the acquisition started, I think, in 2008 or 2009. Thereabout. I think it was completed in 2001 in 9 and 1 in 10, if I'm not mistaken. I'm subject to correction. But they were not completed in 2000, after May 2009. Yet they were not paid for. And nothing was said about their payment. And someone stand in this house to tell me that the length of the lease is inconsequential. Then if it is, why not for the period of the bolt arrangement plus 1 day? Why not 25 years? Why 199 years? Why? If since it's inconsequential, err on the side of caution and put the advantage to the Tobago House of Assembly by saying, okay, we're giving you this thing, it's a bolt arrangement for 20 years, 20 years per year. And it was clearly enunciated that that is the minimum requirement for the bolt arrangement to go through.
In his contribution, Chief Secretary of London indicated that the Green Paper does not have provisions for the THA to borrow for its capital formation.
And the Green Paper, which the Honourable Councillor has indicated that we should be punished if it's not supported in the Parliament. That Green Paper mentions nothing about borrowing. In fact, that Green Paper does not even give us the kind of option that we have now to borrow with the permission of the Minister of Finance. Now, if that is not a retrograde step, I don't know what is. And I would want to know if the mandate that we have got from the people of Tobago will allow us to support something like that.
Mr. London said that the process of using bolts for the construction of the Division of Agriculture's administrative complex is one that is predictable and will not cost the THA more in the coming years.
Here you have a situation where, in relationship to what is going on at Sherwood, that the funding was not available. You had a situation where we would have come up with an arrangement which would have allowed us to have the funding and, as I said, bring a certain amount of predictability to the process. But what our opponents are saying is that it's going to cost us $300 million down the road. That is most disingenuous. Because, Madam Presiding Officer, whether we had borrowed the money or we had entered into bolt, the costs of the project down the road would have been about twice what it is at the start. The actual cost of that building to the assembly was not the $1.4 million that we're going to pay per month. It was in fact, or 1.1 or whatever, it was in fact that cost less the rent that we were going to pay. And we also had the advantage, that cost remained constant for 20 years. One of the things about which this administration has been very clear, we're getting a lot of trouble for it. Two things. We deliver with class and we deliver for posterity. So whether we put it on a school, a financial complex, a library, a cultural complex, we are in fact building for the next generation or the next two generations. We don't think about 2012. We think in 2042 and 2052. So that we have to project what is likely to happen to Tobago in 30, 40 years. And therefore, people feel us overbill. It's not that. We build with vision. And it is in that context that you find that we will build or have facilities that, to us looking at it in 2012, it seems that there is too much capacity. But that is deliberate, because once you put down an agricultural building today, that agricultural building has to serve agriculture in 2032 and 2042. That is how we operate. We don't want at the end of the lease, you know how to look for more land and put on more building.
In debating the issue, Councillor Carruth said that the Executive Council should present a comprehensive capital formation plan.
Their inability to produce a well-formulated and purposefully articulated capital development program has everything to do with the fact that for 12 years, and I cannot say that again, and money spent, money at their disposal, they have not consulted with the people of Tobago for the people's vision for Tobago. They themselves do not have a vision for Tobago, unless their vision is to bring their political cronies to help loot the Tobago treasury in the name of bolt.
Finance Secretary Dr. Anselm London directed Councillor Carruth to the THA's budget presentations.
The development program in the budget. That's why in my introduction I took my time. I say it's only the big-time economists and people like that who speak of capital formation. We talk about the development program. Same thing. And every budget that I know has a development program. This is a very important motion for Tobago, little Tobago as it is, and I hope and trust that we can come together and give unanimous support to a motion that speaks to the accelerated development of Tobago, utilizing all kinds of mechanisms for investment and corporate and capital formation in this lovely island.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. The ayes have it. The motion is therefore passed.
Thank you for tuning in to the 50th sitting of the Tobago House of Assembly 2009 to 2013 session. I am Umadara Mills for the Department of Information.